The morning my mother's will was read felt like walking into a trap I didn't know had been set. Our family gathered in a lawyer's office downtown, surrounded by dark wood panels and books nobody ever read. Outside, rain hit the windows hard, making everything feel cold and gray. My father Marcus sat in the biggest chair like he owned the place. At 68 years old, he still looked like someone who could scare you with just one look. My sister Emma sat next to him, wearing a black dress that probably cost more money than most people made in a month. She smiled at everyone who walked in, but her smile never reached her eyes. I sat in the back corner, trying to make myself small like I always did. The office smelled like old paper and furniture polish. A clock on the wall ticked so loudly it felt like it was counting down to something bad. The lawyer, Mr. Thompson, shuffled papers on his desk, his glasses sliding down his nose. He looked nervous, which made my stomach hurt. Mom had been gone for 3 weeks now. Cancer took her fast, so fast we barely had time to say goodbye. During those last days in the hospital, she held my hand and whispered things I couldn't quite hear. I thought she was just confused from the medicine. Now I wondered if she was trying to tell me something important. Before we start, please hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from today. I read every single one. My father cleared his throat, the sound sharp and impatient. He hated waiting for anything. Emma checked her phone, already bored. They both expected this meeting to be quick and simple. Mom's house, her savings, her jewelry, everything would go to them. That's what father always said would happen. I was just there because the lawyer said all family members had to attend. Nobody expected me to get anything. I was the daughter who disappointed everyone just by existing. Growing up in our house meant learning your place fast. Emma was the star, the one who made everyone proud. She went to fancy schools, married a rich man, knew how to talk to important people. I was the problem child, the one who asked too many questions, who cried too easily, who never fit in anywhere. Father made sure I knew this every single day. When Emma won awards, the whole family celebrated. When I brought home good grades, nobody noticed. When Emma got married, father threw a huge party. When I graduated from college, he didn't even come to the ceremony. Mom was different, quieter. She never defended me when father was cruel, but sometimes late at night she would sit with me and just hold my hand. I used to think that meant she cared. Now I wasn't sure what it meant. The lawyer began speaking, his voice shaky like he was afraid of what would happen next. He talked about legal terms I didn't understand, about property and assets and bank accounts. Father nodded along, looking satisfied. Emma painted her nails under the table, not really listening. Then Mr. Thompson said something that made the room feel different. There are 2 separate documents here, he explained slowly. One is the standard will. The other is a sealed letter with specific instructions. Father's eyes narrowed. What letter? He demanded. Just read the will and be done with it. Mr. Thompson's hands trembled as he picked up the first document. The house and primary savings account, he read, are left to Marcus and Emma. Father smiled. Emma finally looked up from her phone. This was exactly what they expected, what they felt they deserved. However, the lawyer continued, and his voice got even quieter, there is a second property. A lake house purchased 20 years ago under a private trust. This property, along with its contents and separate financial accounts, are left entirely to the youngest daughter. Time seemed to stop. I forgot how to breathe. Father's face turned red, the color rising from his neck to his forehead like a warning. That's impossible, he said, his voice hard as stone. There is no lake house. This is some kind of mistake. Emma's mouth hung open, her perfect composure cracking. Mom would never do that, she said, looking at me like I had stolen something from her. She wouldn't give her anything. The lawyer pulled out more papers, his hands shaking harder now. The property is real, he said firmly. Purchased and maintained in secret. The trust has been active for 2 decades. I couldn't move. My brain couldn't make sense of what I was hearing. A lake house. Money. Why would Mom hide this from everyone? Why would she leave it to me? Father stood up so fast his chair fell backward and crashed against the floor. "This is fraud," he shouted, pointing at the lawyer like he was the enemy. "Someone forged these documents. My wife would never betray me like this." "The documents are legitimate," Mr. Thompson said quietly. "Everything has been verified, notarized, legal." Emma started crying, but they weren't sad tears. They were angry tears, the kind that came when things didn't go the way she planned. "She was sick," Emma said, her voice breaking. "Someone must have tricked her, made her sign things she didn't understand." I found my voice finally, though it came out small and uncertain. "I didn't know about any of this," I whispered. Nobody looked at me. Father paced the room like a trapped animal, his expensive shoes hitting the floor hard with each step. "How much?" he demanded. "How much money are we talking about?" The lawyer hesitated. "The secondary accounts hold approximately $200,000, he said. The room exploded. Emma screamed. Actually screamed. Father punched the wall so hard a picture frame fell down and shattered. "That money was supposed to support Emma's children," Father roared. "Their education fund, their future. You're telling me it's going to her." He pointed at me like I was trash on the sidewalk. "To the daughter who has contributed nothing to this family." My chest felt tight. My vision blurred. This couldn't be real. None of this made sense. Mom never treated me special. She never acted like she favored me. Why would she do this? "There's more," the lawyer said, and everyone froze. He pulled out a thick cream-colored envelope with my name written across the front in Mom's handwriting. She left specific instructions that this letter must be given to her youngest daughter immediately after the will is read. Father lunged for it, but Mr. Thompson pulled it back quickly. "It's addressed to her," he said, his voice stronger now. "Only she has the right to open it." Emma sobbed harder, mascara running down her face in black streams. "This isn't fair," she cried. "I was the good daughter. I did everything right." Father's eyes locked onto mine, and I saw something in them I had never seen before. Not just anger, fear. "Whatever's in that letter is lies," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Your mother was confused at the end. Paranoid. Nothing she wrote can be trusted." I reached out with a shaking hand and took the envelope from Mr. Thompson. Felt heavy, important. The paper was thick and expensive, not the cheap kind from a store. Mom had planned this carefully. That meant something. Emma stood up, wobbling on her high heels. "If you open that," she threatened, "you'll regret it. I promise you will." I looked at the envelope, at my name written in Mom's careful handwriting. For my entire life, I had done what Father told me to do. I stayed quiet when he insulted me. I apologized when I hadn't done anything wrong. I made myself small so Emma could feel big. But Mom had left me something. Not just money or property. She had left me words, her final words, meant only for me. My hands stopped shaking, and broke the seal. Father made a sound like a wounded animal. Emma grabbed her purse and stormed toward the door. "Don't you dare read that out loud," Father commanded. "This is private family business." But I was already unfolding the letter, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The handwriting was definitely Mom's, neat and careful despite how sick she must have been when she wrote it. "My dearest daughter," I read aloud, my voice barely above a whisper. The room went completely silent. Even Emma stopped at the door, frozen in place. "If you're reading this, then I am gone, and the truth can finally be told." I paused, looking up at Father's face. All the color had drained away. He looked old suddenly, fragile in a way I'd never seen before. "Keep reading," Mr. Thompson encouraged gently. I took a breath and continued. "I have lived with a terrible secret your entire life," the letter said. "A secret that shaped every decision I made, every silence I kept." Emma turned around slowly, her face pale. "What secret?" she whispered. Father moved toward me, but Mr. Thompson stepped between us. "Let her finish," the lawyer said firmly. "The man you call father," I read, and my voice cracked, is not your biological father. The words hit the room like a bomb. Emma gasped. Father stumbled backward, catching himself on the desk. That's a lie, he said, but his voice had no strength left in it. I kept reading because stopping now felt impossible. 29 years ago, Mom's letter continued, I was in a relationship with someone else. Someone kind and gentle, everything Marcus was not. When I discovered I was pregnant, Marcus convinced me to stay. He promised he would love you as his own. Tears blurred my vision, but I forced myself to keep going. He broke that promise the day you were born, the letter said. He looked at you and saw only betrayal, only proof of my unfaithfulness. And he has punished you for my mistake every day since. Emma sank into a chair, her hand over her mouth. Father said nothing. His silence was somehow worse than his anger. I was weak, Mom's letter admitted. I should have left him. I should have protected you. Instead, I stayed because I was afraid, because I had nowhere to go, because I convinced myself that staying was what was best for everyone. But I need you to know something important, I read through my tears. Your real father never knew about you. I never told him I was pregnant. He died in a car accident 3 months before you were born. His name was David Chen. He was a good man, a kind man. And he would have loved you completely. The room spun around me. Everything I thought I knew about my life was wrong. Father wasn't my father. The man who had spent my entire life telling me I was worthless, that I was a mistake, that I should never have been born. He had a reason for his cruelty. I was living proof of Mom's betrayal. Emma's voice came out small and broken. You cheated on Dad, she asked, looking at the empty space where Mom should have been. How could you do that to our family? I looked at my sister, at the shock and hurt on her face, and I felt something I'd never felt before. Not anger exactly. Something colder, clearer. She did it because he was cruel to her too, I said quietly. And I paid the price for 29 years. Father finally found his voice. You have no idea what you're talking about, he said. But I wasn't finished with the letter. There was more. The lake house, I continued reading, belonged to David's family. When he died, his parents learned about you from a letter I had sent David. They wanted to meet you, but Marcus forbade it. He said if I ever contacted David's family, he would make sure I lost Emma too. My hands trembled as the pieces fell into place. David's parents bought the house and put it in trust for you, Mom's letter explained. They deposited money every year, waiting for the day you would finally know the truth. They passed away 5 years ago, but their love for you lives on in what they left behind. I looked up at Father, at the man who had terrorized me my entire life. You knew, I said, my voice stronger now. You knew about the trust. You knew Mom was planning to tell me. I knew your mother was a liar, Father spat. Just like you're about to become. Taking money that doesn't belong to you. Living in a house built on betrayal. Emma wiped her face, smearing her makeup even more. I can't believe this, she muttered. Our whole family was a lie. The lawyer cleared his throat. There's one final part, he said, looking at me with something like pity. I didn't want to read anymore. I wanted to run from that office and never look back. But Mom's voice called to me from the page, and I couldn't ignore it. I know this truth will hurt, the letter continued. I know you will feel angry at me for keeping silent so long. You have every right to that anger. I failed you when you needed me most. But I need you to understand something crucial, Mom wrote. Marcus is not a bad man because of what I did. He was already cruel. He was already controlling. My affair was an escape from a prison I didn't know how to leave. The words cut deep, not with pain but with recognition. Mom was giving me permission to see Father clearly, without guilt, without making excuses. The lake house is yours, she wrote. The money is yours. But more importantly, the truth is yours. You are not a mistake. You were never a burden. You were loved by a father who never got to meet you, and you are loved by grandparents who never stopped hoping you would find this letter. Do not let Marcus convince you otherwise. Mom's final words said. Do not let Emma's hurt manipulate you into feeling guilty. You deserve this gift, and you deserve so much more. I folded the letter carefully, my hands steady now. Father stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time, really seeing me. So that's it, he said bitterly. You're just going to take everything and leave. I'm going to accept what was given to me, I replied. Just like you accepted the house and the savings. The difference is, my inheritance comes with love. Yours comes with expectation. Emma stood up, her legs shaky. I need to go, she said to no one in particular. This is too much. I can't process this right now. She left without looking at me, her heels clicking rapidly down the hallway outside. The sound faded until there was only silence. Father and I stood facing each other across the lawyer's office. 29 years of cruelty hung between us like a wall. You knew the truth, I said quietly. You knew I wasn't yours. And instead of being honest, instead of letting Mom leave, you chose to torture a child who had done nothing wrong. Father's jaw clenched. I gave you a home, he said. I gave you food and clothes and an education. You should be grateful. You gave me hell, I corrected. You told me I should have died at birth. You told me I was worthless. You told me I ruined everything good in your life. And you did all of that knowing I was an innocent child who had no choice in how she came into this world. Mr. Thompson stood quietly, a witness to the confrontation he had probably expected. Father looked smaller now, like the anger that had held him together for decades was finally crumbling. What do you want me to say? He asked, and for the first time ever, he sounded tired instead of threatening. I want you to admit it, I said, tears streaming down my face. I want you to admit that you blamed me for something I didn't do. That you punished me because you couldn't punish her. Father's hands curled into fists, then slowly released. Fine, he said, his voice hollow. You want the truth. Every time I looked at you, I saw her betrayal. I saw proof that I wasn't enough, that our marriage meant nothing. I hated what you represented. The words should have hurt. Instead, they felt like freedom. Thank you, I said simply. Father looked confused. For what? For finally being honest, I replied. For finally admitting that your cruelty was never about me. It was about your pride, your ego, your inability to forgive. I picked up my purse and turned toward the door. Wait, Father called out. I stopped but didn't turn around. That money, that house, it should support Emma's family, he said desperately. They need it more than you do. I looked back at him, at this man who had controlled my life through fear for so long. Emma has you, I said calmly. She has a rich husband. She has everything she ever wanted. Had nothing. Mom made sure I would finally have something that belonged to me. You're being selfish, Father accused. No, I said. I'm being free. I walked out of that office and didn't look back. Behind me, I heard Father arguing with the lawyer, demanding to see the documents again, insisting there must be some mistake. But there was no mistake. Only truth, finally spoken after decades of lies. The rain had stopped by the time I reached my car. The sky was still gray, but patches of blue were starting to show through the clouds. I sat behind the wheel for a long time, holding Mom's letter against my chest. She hadn't been perfect. She had made mistakes, terrible mistakes. But in the end, she had tried to make things right. She had given me the truth, and she had given me a way out. The drive to the lake house took 3 hours. I followed the directions Mr. Thompson had given me, winding through small towns and forest roads I had never traveled before. The house appeared suddenly, a beautiful log cabin sitting right at the water's edge. It was smaller than I expected, cozy rather than grand. A dock stretched out into the lake, and trees surrounded the property like protective guardians. I got out of the car slowly, hardly believing this place was real. The key was in the envelope Mr. Thompson had given me, along with account information and deeds. My hands shook as I unlocked the front door. Inside, the house smelled like cedar and lake water. Furniture sat covered in white sheets, waiting patiently for someone to bring it back to life. I walked through rooms that should have felt like a stranger's home but somehow felt familiar. In the main bedroom, I found a photo album sitting on the dresser. My breath caught. I opened it carefully. The first picture showed a young man with kind eyes and a gentle smile. David Chin. My father. My real father. I traced his face with my finger, memorizing features I could see reflected in my own mirror. Dark hair, same nose, same shape of my eyes. He looked happy in every photo, surrounded by friends, holding a guitar, standing in front of a sunset. The next pages showed an older couple. David's parents. My grandparents. They stood in front of this very house, arms around each other, smiling at the camera. They had loved me without ever meeting me. They had believed I deserved something good. Tears fell onto the plastic-covered pages, but I didn't wipe them away. These were different tears, not born from pain but from grief for what could have been. I spent that first night at the lake house wrapped in blankets, watching moonlight dance across the water. For 29 years, I had lived in Father's shadow, believing his version of who I was. Now I understood. His words had never been truth. They had been weapons designed to keep me small, to punish me for existing. But I wasn't his to punish anymore. The next morning I explored the property. I found a garden that had grown wild but still bloomed with flowers. I found a workshop filled with woodworking tools. I found a small boat tied to the dock, waiting to be sailed. This place had been maintained for years, waiting for me. Waiting for the moment I would finally learn the truth and claim what was mine. My phone buzzed constantly. Emma sent messages demanding I reconsider. Father left voicemails insisting we needed to talk about fair distribution. I turned the phone off. Their words held no power here. Over the following weeks, I made the lake house truly mine. I removed the dust covers and opened all the windows. I planted new flowers in the garden. I learned how to take the boat out onto the water. Every day felt like learning to breathe in a new way. People in the nearest town were friendly but not nosy. They saw a young woman fixing up her grandparents' old place and offered help when asked. Nobody knew about Father or Emma or the years of cruelty. Here I was just a person starting fresh. One afternoon while cleaning the attic, I found boxes of letters. They were addressed to me but never sent. My grandparents had written to me every year on my birthday, telling me stories about David, about their lives, about how much they wished they could know me. Your father loved music, one letter said. He would play guitar by this very lake and sing until the sun went down. I read every letter, learning about the family I never knew I had. They had tried to reach me. Father had blocked every attempt. But they never gave up hope. They built this sanctuary and filled it with love, trusting that someday I would find my way here. 3 months after Mom's funeral, Emma came to the lake house. I saw her car pull up the driveway and felt my stomach tighten. I met her outside, not ready to let her into this sacred space. She looked different, tired. The perfect polish she always wore had faded. I needed to see it, she said, looking at the house. Needed to see what Mom thought was more important than her real family. I was her real family too, I replied quietly. Emma's eyes filled with tears. But you weren't Dad's, she said. You were a reminder of betrayal. I was a child, I said firmly. I didn't ask to be born. I didn't deserve what he did to me. And neither did Mom. Emma looked at the lake, at the peace surrounding us. I'm supposed to hate you, she whispered. Dad says you stole from us. Do you? Yes. Hate me. She was quiet for a long time. I don't know what I feel, she finally admitted. Everything I thought I knew was wrong. Our family, our childhood, all of it was built on lies. Not all of it, I said. Your relationship with Mom and Dad was real. Maybe it was complicated, maybe it had problems, but it was yours. This, I gestured to the house, was always meant to be mine. Not instead of what you got, but separate from it. Emma wiped her eyes. He's never going to accept this, she said. He's talking about lawsuits, about fighting the will. Let him fight, I replied. The law is on my side. But more than that, the truth is on my side. I don't think I can keep him in my life if he doesn't stop, Emma said quietly. He's become obsessed. Angry all the time. My husband says it's affecting our marriage. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw someone struggling with the same realization I'd had. The man we grew up with wasn't who we thought he was. You have to make your own choices, I told her. But I can tell you this. Life without his voice in my head is the most peaceful thing I've ever experienced. Emma nodded slowly. She looked at me one more time, then got in her car and drove away. I watched until she disappeared down the road, unsure if I would ever see her again. The seasons changed. Summer turned to fall, fall to winter. I found work in town at a small bookstore, something simple that paid enough to live on. The money from Mom's trust sat untouched in the bank. I didn't need much. Just peace, just space to figure out who I was without someone telling me I was worthless. Father never came to the lake house. He sent lawyers instead, filing papers that went nowhere. The will was solid. The trust was legal. Mr. Thompson had made sure everything was documented perfectly. Every legal challenge failed. Eventually the letters stopped. The phone calls ended. Father gave up, not because he accepted the situation, but because he realized he couldn't control it. One snowy afternoon, Vernon, the lawyer, called me. "Your father had a heart attack," he said gently. "He's stable, but he's asking for you." I thought about it for a long time. Part of me wanted to go, to show him I was the bigger person. But another part of me, the part that had finally healed, knew the truth. Going back would not fix anything. It would only give him another chance to hurt me. "Tell him I hope he recovers," I said to Vernon. "But I won't be visiting." There was silence on the line. Then Vernon said something I didn't expect. "I think that's wise," he admitted. "Some wounds don't heal through forgiveness. Some heal through distance." He was right. Spring came again. I planted a garden where my grandparents' garden used to be. I learned their favorite flowers from the letters and grew those. The lake house became more than a refuge. Became home. I started writing, something I'd always loved but Father had mocked as worthless. Stories poured out of me, stories about families and secrets and children who survived impossible things. A small publisher picked up my first book. It wasn't a bestseller, but it was mine. Completely mine. Built from words I chose. From a voice nobody had silenced. On my 30th birthday, I took the boat out onto the lake at sunset. The water was calm, reflecting pink and orange clouds. I thought about the letter Mom had left, about the gift she gave me when she finally told the truth. She hadn't been a perfect mother. She had stayed silent too long. She had let me suffer when she could have spoken up. But in the end, she had given me what I needed most, the truth. Without it, I would have spent my whole life believing Father's lies. I would have thought I deserved the cruelty. The truth set me free. David's parents had given me a home. Mom had given me knowledge. Together, they gave me a chance to rebuild myself from the ground up. As stars began to appear in the darkening sky, I pulled out my phone and looked at old pictures. One showed me at 15 at a family dinner. My eyes were down, my shoulders hunched, trying to disappear. I barely recognized that girl now. Not because my appearance had changed, but because everything inside had shifted. That girl believed she was a mistake. This woman knew better. Emma texted me sometimes. Short messages, carefully neutral. We weren't close, but we weren't enemies either. She had started therapy, she told me. Was working through her own feelings about Father and Mom and everything that had been hidden. I was proud of her for that. One afternoon, a woman knocked on my door. She was maybe 60, with gray hair and nervous hands. "I'm Sarah," she said. "I was David Chen's sister. Your aunt." I nearly fell over. Family. Real family. We sat on the porch for hours. Sarah told me stories about my father, about his kindness, his humor, his love for this lake. "He would have been an amazing dad," she said, tears in her eyes. "He talked about wanting children someday. He would have loved you so much." We stayed in touch. Sarah introduced me to other relatives. Cousins I never knew existed. They welcomed me completely, no questions, no judgment. Just acceptance. For the first time, I understood what family was supposed to feel like. Years passed at the lake house. I wrote more books. I made friends in town. I learned how to sail properly. I adopted a dog who loved swimming. Life became simple and beautiful in ways I never imagined possible. One day I received a letter from Emma. It was long, handwritten, clearly difficult for her to write. "I've cut contact with Dad," it said. I finally realized that loving him was destroying me. He refused to go to therapy. Refused to admit he'd done anything wrong. I can't live in that darkness anymore. "I'm sorry," she wrote, "for laughing that night. For not defending you growing up. For believing his version of who you were. You deserved better from all of us." I held the letter for a long time. Forgiveness isn't something that happens all at once. It's a process, a choice you make again and again. Chose to write back. Emma and I met for coffee in a town halfway between her home and mine. It was awkward at first, stilted conversation about weather and nothing important. But slowly, carefully, we began to rebuild something. Not the relationship we had as children. That was poisoned from the start. Something new, something honest. She told me about her struggles. I told her about my healing. We were different people now, shaped by the same trauma but responding to it differently. That was okay. We didn't have to be best friends. We just had to be real. Father never apologized. I heard through Emma that he lived alone now, angry and isolated. Part of me felt sad for him. Part of me felt nothing at all. He had chosen his path. Had chosen mine. On the anniversary of Mom's death, I went to her grave. I brought flowers, the same kind that grew in the garden she'd helped create years ago. "Thank you," I whispered to the headstone, "for finally choosing me." The wind moved through the trees around the cemetery. It almost sounded like an answer. Almost. Life at the lake taught me things I never learned growing up. I learned that silence isn't always weakness. Sometimes it's strategy. I learned that being alone isn't the same as being lonely. I learned that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing not to let the past control your present. Most importantly, I learned that my worth was never up for debate. Father's opinions weren't facts. His cruelty wasn't truth. He was just a hurt man who chose to spread his hurt instead of healing it. I didn't have to carry that anymore. I started speaking at support groups for people who grew up in abusive homes. I shared my story not for sympathy but to show others that escape is possible. That healing is real. People came up to me afterward with tears in their eyes. "I thought it was just me," they said. "I thought I was the only one." You're never the only one. Somewhere, someone else is surviving what you survived. Somewhere, someone else needs to hear that it gets better. Kept writing. My third book got picked up by a major publisher. It was a memoir about finding yourself after being told your whole life that you were nothing. The book found readers who needed its message. Letters arrived from people all over the country, thanking me for putting their pain into words. That felt more valuable than any inheritance. Money is useful. Property is nice. But purpose, connection, meaning, those things you can't put in a bank account. Sarah and I became close. She taught me how to make David's favorite meals. She showed me pictures of him as a child, helped me understand where I came from. "You have his heart," she told me once. "Kind even when kindness isn't easy." That was David. I started a tradition. Every year on David's birthday, I took the boat out at sunset and played his favorite songs. I wasn't a great guitar player, but I learned enough to honor him. The music floated across the water, reaching places I couldn't see. Maybe he heard it somehow. Maybe not. But it connected me to the father I never met, and that was enough. The lake house became something more than home. I started hosting retreats for women escaping difficult situations. The space that had healed me could heal others. Women came for weekends or weeks, finding peace in the quiet, in the safety, in the knowledge that they weren't alone. Some arrived broken. They all left stronger. Not fixed. Healing isn't about being fixed but stronger, more certain of their worth, more ready to claim their lives. Father's voice, which had haunted me for decades, grew quieter with each year. Some days I didn't think about him at all. When I did, it was with a strange mix of pity and indifference. He had wasted so much time on hate. I chose to spend mine on love. On my 35th birthday, I stood on the dock watching the sunrise. 5 years had passed since I learned the truth. 5 years of building a life that belonged completely to me. The girl who walked out of that lawyer's office didn't exist anymore. She'd been replaced by someone stronger, someone who knew exactly who she was. I thought about Mom's letter, safely stored in a fireproof box inside the house. Those words had changed everything. Not because they gave me money, 'cause they gave me truth. And truth, I'd learned, was the most valuable inheritance anyone could leave. The publishing company wanted another book. They wanted me to write about forgiveness, about reconciling with Father. People want happy endings, my editor said. They want to see you and your father heal together. Said no. Some stories don't end with reconciliation. Some end with a daughter finally understanding she doesn't need her abuser's approval to live fully. That's not a sad ending. It's a truthful one. I wrote a different book instead. About women who saved themselves. About families you choose rather than families you're born into. About learning that love isn't supposed to hurt. That book sold better than anything I'd written before. Turns out a lot of people needed to hear that message. Emma had a baby. Daughter. She called me crying. I'm terrified I'll be like Mom, she admitted. That I'll stay silent when I should protect her. You won't, I assured her. Because you already know what silence costs. She named the baby after our mother. Not to honor her exactly, but to remember. To make sure the same mistakes didn't repeat. Became Aunt Naira. Felt strange at first being part of a family again. But Emma was different now. Honest. Willing to have hard conversations. She didn't let her husband treat her the way Father had treated Mom. When he raised his voice, she raised hers back. When he tried to control decisions, she stood firm. She was breaking cycles. One Christmas, Sarah invited me to a Chen family gathering. I walked into a house full of cousins and aunts and uncles who shared my blood but not my history. They embraced me completely. You're David's daughter, they said. That makes you family. I cried in the bathroom, overwhelmed by acceptance I'd never experienced before. This was what belonging felt like. Not performance, not proving your worth. Just being welcomed because you existed. Father died when I was 37. Emma called to tell me. I felt nothing at first, then a wave of complicated emotions I couldn't name. Not grief exactly. Relief. Sadness for what never was. I went to the funeral. Not for him, for closure. He looked small in the casket, powerless. All the fear he'd inspired was gone. He was just a man who had made terrible choices. People spoke about his business success. Nobody mentioned his family. Emma and I sat together, holding hands. After the service, she turned to me. Do you think he regretted it? She asked. Treating you that way. I thought about it honestly. No, I said. I don't think he did. I think he believed he was right until the end. That's sad, Emma whispered. Yes, I agreed. But it's not our sadness to carry. We left the cemetery together. Behind us, Father's grave was surrounded by flowers from people who only knew his public face. None of them knew the private monster. That was fine. Let them have their version. I had mine, and I'd already made peace with it. The lake house hosted its 100th guest that year. Women who needed space to think, to heal, to remember who they were before trauma tried to erase them. Some stayed a few days. Others stayed months. All of them left different than they arrived. I didn't charge anyone. The trust fund David's parents left me kept growing. I lived simply, needed little. Using that money to help others felt right. Felt like honoring the grandparents who had loved me from afar. My books were taught in some colleges now. Professors assigned them in classes about family trauma, about recovery, about rewriting your story. Students emailed me questions. I answered every one. How did you stop hating him? They asked. I didn't stop hating him, I wrote back honestly. I stopped letting that hate control me. There's a difference. Do you ever wish things had been different? Every day, I admitted. But wishing for a different past steals energy from building a better present. On my 40th birthday, I threw a party at the lake house. Emma came with her family. Sarah brought the whole Chin clan. Friends from town arrived with food and music. We filled the house with laughter and light. I stood on the dock watching everyone I loved gathered together. These people weren't connected by blood or obligation. They were connected by choice, by genuine care. This was my real family. The one I built when the one I was born into crumbled. Someone started playing guitar. Other people sang. Children ran through the yard chasing fireflies. It was beautiful and messy and perfect. Later, after everyone left, I sat alone on the porch. The letter Mom wrote me all those years ago was in my pocket. I'd read it so many times the creases were wearing thin. You are not a mistake, it said. For 40 years I'd struggled to believe that. Now I knew it was true. Not because Mom said it. Because I'd built a life that proved it. I wasn't a mistake. I was a person who survived. Who grew. Who learned to love herself despite everything trying to convince her she wasn't worthy of love. That night, I wrote a letter of my own. To younger me. To the 15-year-old girl hunched at that dinner table, trying to disappear. It gets better, I wrote. Not immediately. Not easily. But it gets better. One day you'll stand in a house filled with people who chose to love you. You'll write books that help strangers heal. You'll understand that father's cruelty was never about you. You'll forgive yourself for surviving however you needed to survive. You'll learn that being soft in a hard world isn't weakness. It's courage. You'll meet your real family. They'll welcome you. They'll see you exactly as you are and love you anyway. One day, you'll wake up and realize you haven't thought about Father's voice in weeks. That his words no longer echo in your mind. That you've replaced them with your own voice, and your voice is kind. I folded the letter and put it in the box with Mom's letter. They belonged together. Past and future, pain and healing. The moon rose over the lake, bright and full. I thought about David, the father I never knew. About his parents, who loved me from a distance. About Mom, who finally told the truth even though it cost her peace. About all the people who helped me become who I was today. Thank you, I whispered to the night. The words floated out across the water, carried by wind that smelled like pine and fresh beginnings. Somewhere in that darkness, I imagined David hearing me, smiling that gentle smile from the photographs, proud of the daughter he never got to meet. I didn't need Father's approval. I had David's love. Even if he was gone, even if we never met, that love lived in the house his parents built, in the truth Mom finally told, in the life I created when I stopped believing I was worthless. If you're listening to this and you've ever been told you were a mistake, I need you to hear something clearly. You weren't. You aren't. You never were. The people who hurt you with words were wrong. Their cruelty says everything about them and nothing about you. Your worth exists whether anyone acknowledges it or not. And someday, if you're very lucky and very brave, you'll build a life so beautiful that their voices won't reach you anymore. I did that. You can too. If you made it this far, thank you for listening to my story. Means more than you know. Please hit the like button and share this video if it spoke to you. I didn't find peace because I was stronger than Father. I found peace because I chose truth over comfort. I chose honesty over maintaining a pleasant lie. I chose myself even when that choice made me the villain in someone else's story. And that made all the difference. For another story that might touch your heart, click the video on the left. To hear our newest story, try the video on the right.